My fiance's sister says I'm not good enough, so I show her he's already chosen me. My name is Emma, and I'm 27 years old. I work as an account manager for a technology company, a job I fell into more than anything else. I'm pretty average in most ways. Nothing about me really stands out, at least not at first glance, but I have a knack for staying calm in tricky situations, and that's what's gotten me through most of my adult life. A casual social gathering, organized by some colleagues in the next department, where 3 women from my office would meet 3 men from a partner company to network. They were one person short at the last minute, so I was dragged along. I had no great expectations. I wasn't there looking for romance. I just wanted to enjoy a good meal. From the moment we sat down, the other 2 women were fully focused on 2 men across the table who looked like they'd stepped off a magazine cover, with 2 seats left. One occupied by a guy who looked reserved, wearing glasses, and the other by a broad-shouldered man with a strong build. He introduced himself as Jack, even though he was sitting quietly. His confidence was hard to miss. I found myself drawn him. "So do you do any sport?" I asked Jack, noting his athletic build. "I used to be into rugby, but now I concentrate on weight training," he said, his light smile on his face. Jackpot, I was thrilled. There was something so genuine about Jack that made me relax. "Emma, right, do you like to work out?" "To Hest, I don't actually do anything intense, but I enjoy keeping fit," I replied, feeling at ease. At ease. The conversation flowed easily. After that, we talked about fitness routines, favorite foods, and even our thoughts on the latest action movies. It felt like we were in our own world, separate from the others. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers and even made tentative plans to work out together. I hadn't expected anything from this mixer, but I left feeling a little spark that I hadn't felt in a long time. A few days later, Jack invited me to join him for a casual workout at his gym. We ended up spending most of the evening together, and over the next few weeks, we spent most of the evening together. Over the next few weeks, we bonded over training routines, silly film debates, and long conversations over coffee. Eventually, we began to see each other regularly, and our conversations drifted into dreams of the future. He mentioned his plans for a house with a home gym, which made me smile. He had such a clear vision of what he wanted in life. It was around this time that I was invited to Jack's family dinner. He mentioned that his older sister, Laura, had played a big part in raising him after their mother had died. She was 6 years his senior. She was 6 years older than me, and although Jack warned me that she could be a little intense, he assured me that she would welcome me with open arms. On the night of the dinner, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as we arrived. Laura greeted us at the door with a warm smile, although I felt that her gaze lingered on me a little too long. "Laura, I'm actually allergic to prawns," I said politely. A momentary look of surprise crossed her face before she replied, "Oh, I must have forgotten, but Jack loves prawns, so I made it for him." There was something in her tone that I couldn't quite place, almost as if my needs were secondary. Jack quickly brushed it off, taking the prawns from my plate without hesitation, which made me feel better. But throughout the evening, Laura seemed to bring up little things like how much Jack loved her cooking, or how he had always relied on her for advice. The weeks went by and Jack and I became even closer, but every time I visited his house, I could sense Laura's subtle disapproval. It wasn't overt, it was in little gestures and remarks that kept me on edge. She would say things like, "Jack has always loved my cooking," or "He really used to love spending weekends here." Her words were light, but the way she looked at me as she said them hinted at something deeper. I began to wonder if she felt threatened by my presence in Jack's life. One evening, we joined Laura and her boyfriend, Alex. For dinner, Alex was charming, a bit too charming, in fact. As we got into conversation, he turned to me and said, "Emma, you're quite a catch. Laura's told me so much about you." His tone was off, almost as if there was an unspoken message. A little later, Jack excused himself to take a phone call, and Laura also left the room, leaving me alone with Alex. "Emma," he leaned over with a grin. "You and Jack seem really happy together, but if you ever need some fun on the side, I'm here." I was stunned. I felt my heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and anger. "What are you talking about?" I managed to stammer, pulling my hand away. Alex chuckled, "Relax, just a joke." But his look didn't feel like a joke when Jack returned. I forced a smile, pretending everything was fine, but a sinking feeling remained. Why had Laura shared so much about me with him? and why did it feel like this joke was planned? As I continued to spend time with Jack and attend family gatherings, Laura's behavior became stranger. During one dinner, I mentioned my love of a particular spicy dish, and immediately Laura said, "Jack always liked it when I was cooking." Immediately, Laura said Jack had always hated spicy food, didn't he? But to her surprise, Jack shrugged and said, "Actually, I've started to like it, thanks to Emma." I could see Laura's face tensing slightly, a flicker of irritation in her eyes before she forced a smile and changed the subject. Another time, when Jack and I went to his family's house, I began to feel itchy. Shortly after dinner, hives started to appear on my arms, a reaction I knew only too well. Something must have contained shellfish, although none was visible in the meal when I mentioned it. Laura looked concerned, but didn't say anything. "Maybe you have other allergies, Emma. It must be hard for Jack to deal with this," she said with a slight edge to her voice. It felt like she was shifting the blame, implying that my allergy was inconvenient for Jack. I tried to ignore it, but these little incidents began to wear on me. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that Laura wasn't just indifferent to me. She actively didn't want me in Jack's life. Things took a darker turn on the day Jack and I announced our engagement. Laura's reaction was calm at first, but as the months went by and the wedding planning began, she became more and more possessive of Jack's time. One evening when I was at her house helping Jack with the wedding details, I noticed Laura watching us intently. Every time Jack smiled at me or touched my hand, she seemed to grow visibly tense. The day before the wedding, I arrived at the venue early to finalize the last-minute arrangements. As I entered the dressing room, my heart sank. My wedding dress was on the floor, torn, the veil, the lace, all shredded. I turned to see Laura standing there, breathing heavily. A strange look in her eyes. "Laura, why would you do this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You're taking him away from." Emma, she said in a bitter voice, "You don't understand how much he means to him." I took a deep breath and replied, "Laura, Jackie's your brother. He loves you, but he has a life beyond youth." The doors suddenly opened and Jack walked in. His eyes widened as she took in the scene. Standing with Laura, my dress in tatters, she looked from the dress to Laura, his face a mixture of anger and hurt. "What have you done?" Laura hesked, his voice trembling. Jack, she looked at them and said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry." She's sorry. She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry." She said, "I'm sorry." Jack, his voice shaking. "Jack, she's changing you. You don't even like spicy food, but suddenly you do. Just because she does, you've changed everything." We had. Jack slowly shook his head. "Laura, I haven't changed. I've grown, and you have to accept that." Laura's face fell as if she finally realized the damage she had done. She mumbled something to herself and left the room, leaving Jack and I standing in silence. After a few moments, he pulled me close to him, promising that nothing would keep us apart. The next day, we got married, but there were no further interruptions. Jack and I moved on, and although we tried to keep in touch with Laura, her resentment lingered. It was hard for Jack, who loved his sister deeply, but knew he couldn't let her control his life. We built our own lives free of her influence, but sometimes a part of me wondered if Laura would ever truly let go of her attachment to him. In time, Jack and I settled into our lives together, creating new traditions and focusing on our own happiness. Laura eventually reached out, though her tone had softened, and she seemed to have accepted that Jack had a life apart from her. Our relationship remained cautious, but we were finally able to share family dinners without the unspoken tension that had haunted us for so long. Looking back, I realize how close we came to losing everything to Laura's possessive love. But by facing it together, Jack and I grew stronger, understanding that the true power of love lies in setting each other free, even when it's hard to let go.